Thank you for watching today. Got a special video that I just want to talk about here because the big question is, can Donald Trump be removed from the Washington State primary ballot? Washington State votes on the presidential primary, two different parties, in March, early March. And so the question has come up lately because of what's happened in Colorado and Maine. In Maine, the Secretary of State just decided to remove Donald Trump. And in Colorado, there's a legal process with the Supreme Court. The Colorado Supreme Court basically said they were going to remove Donald Trump from the ballot, and that's going up to the Supreme Court. And so the U.S. Supreme Court is going to probably be dealing with this issue next month. But of course, the question had come up in Washington State, and Steve Hobbs, who's a Democrat and is our Secretary of State right now after he was appointed and then recently elected, and he was appointed originally by Inslee when Republican Kim Wyman decided to join the Biden administration. And so Steve Hobbs is the current Secretary of State. And so, of course, as a Democrat, he's been flooded with questions from Democrats who, in an effort to defend democracy, or at least they claim that they're here to defend democracy, they first need to destroy it by removing anybody that you could vote for, which is similar to what they do in Russia or Venezuela or Zimbabwe. So in an effort to get as close to those countries' electoral process as possible in America, the Democrats have chosen to go down this process of removing people they don't like from the ballot. And Donald Trump, of course, is the number one target. So this came out as a story on KUOW and NPR News. They were all excited about this as they interviewed Steve Hobbs a few weeks ago. And he talked about the process that we have to go through in Washington State. And there is a legal process, which has never, to my knowledge and anybody else's information so far, I don't think it's ever been done before. And it's pretty limited, and it just failed today, by the way. But let's get into what actually happened. And so just a collection of people, some random Democrats out in Kitsap, decided that they would try to file a challenge to remove Donald Trump from the ballot after hearing about Steve Hobbs and NPR. Discuss the process because it's kind of a really weird, very unusual legal process that you can go through. And essentially, on January 9th, each of the political parties has to submit their list to the Secretary of State's office in Washington State as to who's going to be on the presidential primary in March. And so the Democrats do this and the Republicans do it. And so that list, and presumably minor parties also do the same thing. Although I believe that this one's only going to be the Republican and the Democrats, because essentially Secretary of State's running a primary on behalf of the two major parties to determine which of their candidates are going to be on the general election ballot later on. And so this presidential primary process is something you vote in. And each of the political parties love these presidential primaries because in Washington State, you don't register by political party. You actually, nobody has a political party affiliation specifically. But the only time that your party affiliation ever matters is when you're going to focus and say, okay, I'm going to vote for who's going to be president. To some extent, I think it also applies when you're voting for PCOs, precinct committee officers, because you can't vote for both the Democrat and the Republican precinct committee officer where you live. That's a separate story. Let's just focus on the presidential one because this is high drama now. So what happened is you have 2 days to file this challenge, and only one group of people managed to get their filing at least within that 2-day window, and they were in Kitsap County. And you have to file the challenge in the county in which you live. So these 8 people collectively didn't have an attorney, couldn't find one, I guess, and so they filed this challenge. And the hearing was today. I'm recording this video on Tuesday, January 16th, so the hearing was actually this morning out in Kitsap County, because they have to hear this case within 5 days. The problem with the hearing and the reason why the judge threw it out today was manifold, and there were a number of different problems. First of all, the original judge, this Judge Roof, apparently got the hearing scheduled for him, and Judge Roof wasn't actually qualified to hear the case. He'd retired back in 2016 in Washington State. According to our Constitution, in Article 4, Section 3A, you can actually look at it. You have to retire when you're a judge, and you're 75 years old. You can't be any older than that. As a judge in Washington State, it's kind of a mandatory retirement thing here. Judge Roof had to retire back in 2016. I don't know why they brought this guy out for retirement. The additional problem, of course, was that he wasn't actually he let his membership in the bar lapse, so he really couldn't make a decision. It was kind of weird. I don't know why that he was a judge initially. And so he got changed, and they brought in a judge that was legal to hear the case. And immediately the judge said, hey, listen, I'm not going to make a decision on this because there were a number of different problems with it. But he's like, I'm not going to make a decision for the entire state of Washington out of Kitsap County. And he said that's going to be for somewhere else. Well, the same group of people also filed supposedly in Thurston County, some kind of equivalent hearing. Now, keep in mind, this whole thing was kind of botched, right? Nobody really got any notice. It was hyped up in the Seattle Times and the newspaper as some big exciting thing, and I'm sure The Stranger and all these leftist groups will be talking about in the newspapers. I'm kind of repeating myself here, but all the squawk boxes will all get together and be excited about it, but it doesn't really look like it's that serious of a case. When you have these rocket dockets like this, which rocket docket just means like you get this immediate hearing. It's similar to when you do ballot title challenges. I know it's a little different, but it has the same kind of process where supposedly you get a hearing within 5 days. I've done several ballot title challenges myself, pro se, which means I didn't have an attorney. But the notice requirements are usually pretty strict on that. You have to specifically provide documentation to the Secretary of State. You have to provide it to the other side, right? There's a number of different, the Attorney General, at least in a ballot title challenge, there's some very specific notice requirements you have to go through. And otherwise, if you don't do that, it's just moot. There's really nothing to talk about. Now, the truth is, no judge really wants to be the person at this point in time getting a lot of scrutiny for running this kind of marginally, poorly thought out sort of process and throwing somebody off the ballot when it's never been done before and when it's not even clear into the Washington State Constitution that it can really be done. I mean, there's a legal process that kind of exists there to throw somebody off the ballot, but it's never been used this way before. And in a high-profile situation like this, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. And at least that's why it got thrown out today in Kitsap. But it looks like that there's a possibility there could still be a hearing in Thurston County, even though the people who filed that case in Thurston County don't have any standing, nor did they provide any proper notice. So I'm eager to see what judge they can dredge up in the judge list out there who gets to hear the case. I've been in Thurston County many, many times. I don't know how many times, actually. At least 30 cases that I've been in Thurston County. So I'm curious to see which judge they'll pull out and who gets this on their list. But it looks like there's a lot of deficiencies and problems associated with this case. The Trump campaign's not even responding, as far as I can tell. What you really have is the local Republican Party is engaged because it's their candidate list, and they don't want to have any of their candidates just thrown off the list just because somebody at The Stranger thought it was a good idea, or an NPR. So anyway, that's what's happening right now. If you haven't read the stories, I'll try to link to a couple of them down below. It was really exciting for a lot of Democrats in Washington State to think they could throw Trump off the ballot because, again, nothing proves that you're going to defend democracy more than trying to destroy it first by making sure nobody can vote on it. Kind of similar to the attitude that they've had about the initiative process lately. It usually just means that they just don't like the other side, and that if there's a game somebody can play to remove somebody from the ballot or to prevent you from voting on something, that's the game they're going to want to try to play. It's probably a tempest in a teapot. It's still an interesting story, so that's why I wanted to give you an update on it in case you heard about it anywhere else. And maybe there'll be something more to talk about on Thursday. But that's it. So remember, just like anything else, the future belongs to those who show up. I do like activism. If there's a legal process somebody wants to go out and get involved in that makes a difference, go for it. But you do kind of have to do it right and follow the rules such as they are. And theoretically, we still live in a nation full of laws, and so sometimes those laws are supposed to apply to everybody. And so even in Washington State, they usually aren't allowed just to totally make up any law they want and then apply it selectively. I realize the Attorney General does that all the time here, and I realize our judges oftentimes do that. But theoretically, they aren't supposed to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens on Thursday in Thurston County. But today in Kitsap County, it went nowhere, so Trump will probably still be on the ballot for both the presidential primary and presumably, based on what's going on around the country, I'm sure he'll be on the November ballot as well. So again, and you can go to the video description down below. I have some information linked there if you want to know a little bit more. And that's it for this video today.